Hello, my dear students in 4th primary. Welcome in today's lesson in Unit 10 titled Decimal. In our previous lesson, تعلمنا how to write the decimal fractions in word form, standard form, expanded form, وكمان في unit form. Today in lesson 5, same value, different ways. Our objective هدفنا النهاردة is to write decimals as fractions. وكمان we will practice how to read the decimals. We will start our lesson by reviewing. تعالوا نراجع بقى الأول the different forms of writing decimals in the next activity. Name the model. Now let's go to the access part in page 81. تعالوا كده نشوفها مع بعض. Okay, here in the access part, as you see here we have three models. عندنا three models ومطلوب مننا to express the models in as many different forms as we can. طيب, now take some time to solve the first model, then we will solve it and review the answers all together. And now after you have finished, let's review your answers together. There is a bar model in the first question. هو الفيرست question زي ما احنا شايفين here is the bar model. الموديل ده consists of 10 squares. لو عدينا السكويرز دول هنلاقيهم 10 squares and 7 of them are shaded. We can express this by writing what? By writing the fraction 7 over 10. يعني 7 shaded parts over 10. 7 out of 10. طيب لما كتبتها 7 over 10 this is a fraction. طب لو أنا عايزة أكتبها in word form I will write it 7 tenths like this 7 tenths. يبقى 7 10 as a fraction 7 tenths as a word form. طيب لو عايزة أكتب this one as a standard form it will be 0.7. Right? Okay, let's move to the second problem. The second problem, the model here consists of 100 squares. لو عدينا السكويرز دول you will see that they are 100 squares. Consists of 3 columns shaded. لو بصينا كده هنلاقي 3 shaded columns, right? Okay, ده معناه ايه؟ ده معناه ان انا عندي 30 shaded squares. If you count these squares you will see that they are 30 shaded squares. طيب بس كده ولا كمان عندي 5 more. Yes, I have here 5 more squares shaded. طيب يبقى كلهم على بعضهم كام؟ 10, 20, 30 and 5 so they are 35 squares, right? 35 shaded squares لما أجي أكتبها as a fractions هكتبها 35 out of 100, right? طيب if I want to write it as a standard form means I will write in digits 0.35 over 100. It means that it is 35 hundredths. So I'll put after the 0 35 to be 35 hundredths. طيب لو أنا عايزة أكتبها in the word form يعني in letters it will be 35 hundredths. الword form بكتبها as I read it. As I read it, I write it. Okay, تعالوا بقى let's move to the third problem. Here's the third problem. Here I have what? Can you see? Yes, I have 3 squares, each of them divided into 10 parts. 1, 2, 3, right? كل واحد فيهم divided into 10 squares. Sorry, 10 parts. طيب, 2 squares are completely shaded. زي ما احنا شايفين كده 2 squares دول كلهم shaded. And the third one contains only 6 shaded parts out of 10. طيب, احنا كلنا عارفين when we have completely shaded shape ده معناه ايه؟ ده معناه ان هو it represents one whole, right? طيب لما يكون عندي 2 completely shaded squares يبقى represent what? 2 wholes, right? And the third square is what? 6 parts out of 10 is shaded. يبقى when I can write it as a fraction, how can I write it? Yes, as a fraction it will be 2 and 6 over 10, right? طيب لو عايزة أكتبها in standard form it will be 2 wholes and 6 parts out of 10 أو 2.6. What about if I want to write it in expanded form? expanded form يعني بكتب ال value of each digit و between them addition. يعني هكتب 2 plus 0.6 أو 2 plus 6 tenths. Right؟ طب لو عايزة أكتبها in the unit form yes هكتب الديجيت وجنبه ال place value بتاعه. يعني 2 ones and 6 tenths. Like you see here, this is the fraction, this is decimal, this is the expanded form, and this is the unit form. And as you know that 2 and 6 over 10 is written as mixed number, right? Now I want to ask you a question. عايزة أسألكوا سؤال. What about all fractional parts? Can we express all the fractions as decimals? ولا decimal fractions only that are tenths and hundredths؟ طيب هقول لكم السؤال بطريقة تانية. هو بس الفراكشنز اللي الدينومينيتور بتاعها 10 أو 100 هما دول بس اللي ينفع أخليهم decimal numbers؟ على فكرة no. If I have 1 over 2 for example أو 1 over 4 زي half و quarter ينفع أخليهم decimals؟ Yes. half and quarter ينفع أخليهم decimals بس هنعرفها in the next lessons. But today النهاردة هنعرف ازاي to convert tenths to hundredths in fractions and decimals. هنتعلم النهاردة we will learn this now through a model fraction activity in page 82. Here we have in page 82, let's see it. Here in page 82 we have 4 models. مطلوب مننا to express each model in fractions and decimals. Let's solve problem number 1 all together. Here's problem number 1. طيب problem number 1 in the first model there is a square divided into 10 parts. زي ما احنا شايفين كده ال square divided into 10 parts. 9 of them are shaded parts. طيب الشيب ده كل التوتال parts كام؟ 10 right؟ يبقى ال denominator بتاعي 10. And how many shaded parts? 9. So the denominator will be 9. يبقى الفراكشن بتاعي 9 out of 10. طيب can you express this by the fraction 9 over 10? Yes, this fraction will be 9 over 10. Okay, in order to represent that in a decimal لو عايزة أكتبها بقى in a decimal هعمل إيه؟ أول حاجة هشوف ال whole number. The whole number here is 0. وأنا عندي whole number here? No, I don't have any whole number. ليه؟ عشان مش الشيب كله shaded, right? The square is divided into 10 parts. This means that the shaded parts will be written in the 10th place. So the decimal is, أو how can I write it as a decimal؟ هكتب 0.9 اللي هي 9 tenths, right? تعالوا نشوف بقى in the second problem. Here we have a model بس المرة دي الموديل consists of 100 squares with 38 shaded pieces. طيب تعالوا نكتب الكلام ده as a fraction. 38 shaded يعني 38 in the numerator. What about the denominator? Denominator يعني all the parts. So I have 100 parts. يبقى الفراكشن بتاعي 38 out of 100. Using the same method بنفس الطريقة اللي حليت بيها الفيرست problem I will write the decimal as what؟ مش كلهم 100 so the decimal is 0.38 hundredths. And that's because عشان the denominator is 100. And now I'll give you time to solve problems number 3 and 4. Now do you know the answer in model 3? Here is model 3. Model 3 we have 6 tenths. So the fraction is what? 6 tenths يعني 6 over 10, right? 6 parts out of 10. And it should be written as what? طب لو عايزة أكتبها في الديسيمال هكتبها ازاي؟ Like الديسيمال هكتبها ازاي؟ Yes, 0.6 which means it is 6 tenths. Okay, now let's move to problem number 4. Problem number 4, we have a model of 100 pieces, 65 of them are shaded. يبقى الفراكشن بتاعي how can I write it? Yes, 65 shaded parts يبقى هكتب 65 out of 100. طيب if I want to write it in the standard form لو عايزة أكتبها in standard form دي يعني هكتبها in digits. How can I write it? Yes, تبقى 0.65 أو 0.65 hundredths. ليه؟ عشان الدينومينيتور بتاعي is 100. طيب دلوقتي عايزة أسألكوا سؤال. How do we know whether to use؟ إزاي بعرف أستخدم 10 أو 100 في الدينومينيتور؟ لما سألت السؤال ده to my students they told me that if there is a model، لو الموديل متقسم ل 10 parts يبقى الدينومينيتور بتاعي هيبقى 10. لكن لو الموديل بتاعي متقسم ل 100 parts يبقى لازم الدينومينيتور بتاعي يبقى 100. وعلى فكرة this is the correct answer. Now let's solve problem number 2. But let me ask you another question. عايز أسألكوا question تاني. In model number 1 لو بصينا كده في model number 1 هلاقي الديسمال بتاعي ايه؟ It is 0.9. طيب أقدر أعمل represent ل 0.9 دي في model consists of 100 parts. 0.9 يعني 9 out of 10. Can I represent this في model consists of 100 parts? I think you can guess the answer. طيب one of our students said that we can do this. ليه we can do this؟ عشان we know إن الفراكشن 0.9 هي نفسها 0.90 أو ال 9 tenths هي نفسها 90 hundredths. Right؟ ده معناه إيه؟ ده معناه we can represent it in a model by shading 90 parts. لأن 9 out of 10 هي نفسها 90 out of 100. Now can we use the same method؟ نقدر نستخدم نفس الطريقة to represent 0.38 hundredths on the model of 10 parts only. يعني أنا لو عايزة أعمل 0.38 ينفع to represent it على موديل متقسم ل 10 parts only. Your friend say I can't do this. طب قال لأ ليه؟ Because the first square is divided into tenths only, right? يبقى we can't represent the digit 8 hundredths in this من غير ما اعمل divide للسكوير ل 100 parts. يعني لازم السكوير يكون متقسم 100 parts عشان اقدر to represent this number in it. And now we can go to the decimals as fractions as the title says. زي ما التايتل بيقول بالظبط we will express written decimals as fractions. طيب تعالوا نشوف بقى in problem number 1. Problem number 1 we have الديسيمال هو 0.23 أو 0.23 hundredths. على فكرة لو قريناه صح هنعتبر نفسنا إن إحنا حليناها right. Now we can simply write it as a fraction. هكتبها إزاي؟ هي مش 23 hundredths يبقى الفراكشن بتاعها هكتبها إزاي؟ 23 over 100 right؟ طيب one of my students asked me question. في حد من الستودنتس بتوعي سألني سؤال. قال لي ميس can I convert the form without reading؟ ينفع أعمل convert من غير ما أقراه؟ I told him that you should لازم تبص كويس قوي على right side of the decimal point. يعني على النمبرز اللي بعد الديسيمال point. وتعد how many digits بعد الديسيمال points. لو في 2 digits after the decimal point on the right ده معناه إيه؟ تفتكر الدينومينيتور هيبقى إيه؟ هيبقى 10 ولا 100؟ Yes, you are right. It is 100. تاني, if I have two digits after the decimal point يبقى الدينومينيتور بتاعي هيبقى 100. اوكي طيب what about 23؟ 23 اللي بعد البوينت دي هتبقى the numerator. And now let's move to problem number 2. Here in problem number 2 we have a decimal fraction but we are not going to read it. مش لازم نقراه. اوكي If you look carefully هتلاحظ ايه؟ هتلاحظ that we have only one digit after the point. شايفين الديسيمال بوينت؟ بعد البوينت عندي ديجيت واحد بس. تفتكروا ان الدينومينيتور هيبقى ايه؟ one digit after the point يعني الدينومينيتور بتاعي will be 10. And what about the numerator؟ هيبقى الديجيت after the point which is 3. يبقى من غير ما اقراها عرفت ان الفراكشن بتاعي 3 out of 10. Now let's go to the modeling decimals in page 83. تعالوا كده نشوفها مع بعض. Okay, here is the modeling decimals. Here this activity will give us a better understanding. هتفهمنا حاجات أكتر about how to read the decimals and fractions. طيب هنا مطلوب مننا to represent the decimals in the models, then write them as fractions. يبقى الأول هنعمل الديسيمالز وبعدين هنكتبهم as fractions. Let's see problem number 1. Here الديسيمال is 2.93 أو 2 and 93 hundredths. Right? زي ما احنا شايفين كده here is the decimal number. طيب يبقى أنا المفروض أعمل شيدنج لإيه؟ قبل الديسيمال بوينت 2 ده معناه إن أنا عندي 2 whole squares, right؟ يبقى I will shade 2 whole squares like this. ده represent ال 2 whole. What about the 93? ال 93 دي البارتس اللي عندي. يبقى I will shade كل السكوير except 7, right؟ هعمل shading كل سكوير except 7. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So I will shade this 3 and then I will shade the rest of the shape. يبقى أنا كده I represent 2 whole squares and 93 parts out of 100. تعالوا نشوف بقى problem number 2. Problem number 2 بيقول لي he want me to write the previous decimal as a fraction. عايزني أكتب بقى الديسيمال دي here as a fraction. هكتبها إزاي؟ تعالوا كده نحلها مع بعض step by step. Now I have 2 whole squares. عندي 2 squares whole squares. والديسيمال بارت بتاعي كان 93 out of 100. طب ده معناه إيه؟ إن الفراكشن بتاعي هيبقى 2 wholes and 93 parts out of 100, right? وزي ما احنا شايفين this is a mixed number. I think now you know why. أنا متأكدة إن أنتوا عارفين ليه this is a mixed number. عشان mixed number consists of whole number and fraction part, right? Okay. Now take some time to solve problems number 5 and 6 and use the same method. عايزاكم تستخدموا نفس الطريقة used in the previous problems and then we will review the answers all together. And now let's check the answers all together. Here in problem number 5, as you see here, we have 1.32, a 1 and 32 hundredths. We want to shade or represent this and by shading. طيب هعمل إيه؟ Yes, I have 1 يعني 1 whole square. So I will shade 1 whole square like this. And then I have 32 parts. يبقى I will shade 3 columns and 2 out of 100, right? Okay, so this will take us to problem number 6, where we will write the mixed number as 1 whole and fractions as 32 over 100. تاني يبقى هكتب ال 1 whole and 32 hundredths. هكتبها 32 out of 100 and this is my mixed number. Now let's move to the last activity in build. Go to more decimals as fractions in page 84. Let's see it. Okay, here we are required. مطلوب مننا to express the decimals as fractions. عايزاكم تاخدوا بالكم كويس قوي to the numbers. They contain ones with tenths and hundredths. And here in problem number 1, here it is. We can divide 3.4 into 3 ones يعني 3 whole and 4 tenths يعني 4 over 10. Okay, so the mixed number will be like you see here 3 and 4 over 10. Let's move now to problem number 2. Here's problem number 2. And let's try to write the number 10 and 5 hundredths as a mixed number. طيب 10 دي الwhole number بتاعي يبقى هكتب 10 and this is 5 hundredths. It means 5 over 100. This is the mixed number 10 and 5 over 100. طيب ليه كتبتها كده؟ I know you know the answer. Yes, كتبتها in this way because there are 2 digits next to the decimal point. ده معناه الدينومينيتور لازم يبقى 100. Right? عندي هنا 2 digits after the decimal point. So my denominator will be 100. And now let's go to the connect. In page 84, are they equivalent? In this activity is about 2 fractions. 3 over 10 with 30 over 100. Here is 3 over 10 with 30 over 100. One of my students said in both fractions are equivalent. طب do you agree or no? انتوا موافقينه في الكلام ده ولا لا؟ Now take some time to think about it. You can use ممكن نستخدم models to express your thinking, and we will discuss the answers all together when you finish. Now let me show you. عايزة بقى أوريكم الأنسر بتاع one of my students. My student said that the two fractions are equivalent. هو قال لي yes, two fractions are equivalent, 3 over 10 and 30 over 100. طيب when we want to, if we represent these fractions هنلاقي إن إيه؟ in shaded, if we shade 3 columns of the first model, ما 3 over 10 يعني لازم أعمل shading ل 3 columns, right? Okay, طيب وأعمل 3 over 100 يعني هعمل shading ل 30 parts of the second model. This is 10, 20 and 30. يبقى أنا كده we represent 3 over 10 and I represent 30 over 100. لما عملنا كده هو لقى إن both sides are equal after he finished the shading. لاحظ إن shaded parts look equal in both sides. و two models are equal as well. عشان كده قال ال fractions must be equivalent to each other. And that's why 3 over 10 is equivalent to 30 over 100. Now you can go to the practice part and check your understanding by scanning the quick code in the beginning of this lesson that will direct you to the digital version of your math textbook on the Egyptian Knowledge Bank. Now open page 81 or look at the one on the screen here like you see here. Problem number 1. Here's problem number 1. Here we should express, مطلوب مننا to express the shaded models by fractions and decimals. أكتب الفراكشن والديسيمال بتاعها. زي ما احنا شايفين كده الموديل consists of 3 squares. كل واحد فيهم divided into 10 parts. طيب أول 2 squares are completely shaded. زي ما شايفين كده this is completely shaded and this is completely shaded. The third one 6 parts only are shaded. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. تعالوا بقى let's solve this together. الديسيمال هنا هتبقى ايه؟ هتبقى 2 whole number, right؟ يبقى الديسيمال بتاعي هيبقى 2 whole number. طيب after the decimal point يعني عندي how many parts؟ 6 parts out of 10 يبقى 2.6. When I read it, it is 2 and 6 tenths, right? Okay. طيب what about if I want to write this as a fraction؟ عشان عندي 2 whole يبقى هكتب 2 whole. What about the parts؟ I have 6 out of 10 يبقى 2 and 6 over 10 which is a mixed number. Okay. طيب ليه كتبت 10؟ because I have 10 columns في الموديل. كل موديل فيه 10 parts. Great job. Now we have finished today's lesson which is called same value different ways. النهارده اتعلمنا how to express the decimals as fractions and as mixed numbers. Thank you so much for your watching and see you next lesson.